I'm your host, Dino Watt, and get ready to be inspired as you learn exactly how to own your role. And welcome once again to the Own Your Role podcast, everyone. Excited to have you here. My name is Dino Watt, your host. And as always, we're bringing you unique entrepreneurs who really are doing something different in our communities and helping your community out. So before we get started, I always want to thank you for subscribing to the show and getting that notification button going so that you can know when the next episodes come out to you, which is usually about every week or every 2 weeks. And I want to thank you for those of you that came up to me at the last event where we talked about your love for the show and how much information you're getting out of it, and really enjoying the pivot we've taken with the Own Your Role from the Propreneur. So again, everybody, thank you for being supporters of the show. Now, on today's show, we're going to talk to Jonathan Porter-Whistman, who is an author, who is an innovator, and is somebody who really has lived an exciting life. And we're going to learn all about how to predictably find the right people in your business to not be, as he calls them, flight risks in your business, which we don't even have to explain. That totally makes sense, right? So let's get started with the show. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Dino, nice to be here. I've enjoyed our green room back of the stage conversation, and so looking forward to spending some time with you and your audience.
Thank you. Yeah, this will be a lot of fun. Well, we always start every show, Jonathan, with your story. Like, you don't have to tell us like where you're born and all that fun stuff, but what is your origin story? What brought you to this space, this place in your life? Because I believe stories are what connect all of us. So
yeah, so we'll go way back in time. No, we were talking about this in the green room. I grew up in a religious cult. Mm-hmm. I don't spend a lot of time talking about that. I will with you on the show here, but the reason I share that is because inside of that environment got really exposed to how do people think. How do you create action in people, those sort of things? And I also grew up in a really poor family. And so I knew that if I was going to be able to, for my life, I was going to have to be able to provide for myself. So I started a small business. I grew that and sold it for a couple $1 million after a few years. And I realized during that period of time that it was really about how do I find people, how do I motivate them, how do I get them to join my cause, much like I had learned in the cult. During that, and I also had a passion for small business owners at that point. And I was inexperienced in business, so I quickly lost all of the money that I had earned during that period of time. And then I had to get serious about business. Like, what did I need to learn? What did I not know? So this passion between what fundamentally causes a business to function, and then how do I take the capital and the revenue that comes from that and invest it into growing wealth, right? And to growing and having an impact on my community. From there, I got involved in other people asking me about their businesses. So I started doing some sideline consulting and fell in love with the world of tech. And so I built and sold a couple of tech companies, and I got asked to write the book, The Sales Boss, which is all around how do I build a sales team? How do I hire them? How do I train them? How do I manage them? And I did that effort with Wiley, and that really led me to being inside a lot of large organizations, thinking through their people problems, seeing up close that challenge of how do I hire them. I was at a speaking engagement about 3 years ago, and I came across a gal who, I'm a big believer in pre-hire assessments, or you've probably heard of like DISC and Myers-Briggs and all those. And she approaches me after the talk and she says, I think these assessment companies get it wrong, because I don't think a business owner really cares if somebody's introverted or extroverted. What I think they care about is somebody going to be really talented in this role, happy in the role, and how long are they going to stay?
Yeah.
And I said, well, you're right. And she has a great, interesting story. She literally grew up in Taiwan in a rice paddy, no running water, no electricity, first of her family to go to college. Wow. And she's an amazing thinker, a data scientist, IO psychologist. And she had built a way of thinking and predicting how people would do in roles. And she didn't have a ton of clients at the time, but she had name brands clients, Mercedes-Benz, CrowdStrike, Mercedes-Benz. She was taking car salespeople that were, wanting a job as a car salespeople, giving them an online questionnaire, and then predicting how many cars would they sell. Would they sell 50? Would they sell 15? Would they sell 10? And she was getting to within 15 to 20%.
Wow.
So that has a huge impact when you can say, hey, I'm taking this gamble on hiring and I can improve my odds. And so, so I became a equity investor in that organization. We relocated the company here to the U.S., and we've been working with large enterprise companies, helping them solve this problem around how do I hire and identify great fit candidates. Over the last 2 years, we've moved into what I would call the SMB space. We're helping companies, probably like a lot of your listeners, right, who maybe have a smaller employment group. We do home service businesses, we do trade groups, we do professional services groups. So that's where we play.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm fascinated by, number one, the idea of the culture idea. Like, how do you get people to move and do what you want them to do? How do you get people convinced that what your gospel is the one they want to, share? I've been obsessed with culture for a long time. I talk a lot about it because I do believe it is like the cult that you are in, and you got to decide which one you want, right? And how am I going to build this? I'm going to build the cult of Dino, the cult of Jonathan, or whatever. I don't have a negative connotation to those. I just look at it as going, wow, that's powerful. If we use it correctly, if you use it for good, right? Because all things can be used for good or ill, that we use that and it can be super powerful.
Yeah. And I write about that in my book. I write about 5 truths about human behavior that I think if you can master in any business setting really gives you quite an advantage. And one of those truths has to do with how people believe. And I have this phrase, I believe you believe that. And the truth that's attached to that is,
oh, that's really smart. I like that.
The truth attached to that about humans is things are only good or bad by comparison. What I mean is when your employee or anyone in your life is deciding how do they feel about something, how are they going to do something, what action are they going to take, it's always in comparison to something they have experienced before. So if they think they're a great leader, they're comparing themselves to leaders that they've been exposed to. Sure. I remember, back when I would first rent cars, I loved renting cars because it was always better than the piece of junk that I had as my personal car, right?
Sure.
But at some point, that point of comparison was no longer there. Like, I hate to rent cars now. And you have to realize when you bring people into your organization or you're thinking about that two things. One is, how did they get their point of comparison for great? How closely does it mirror your standard of great? Like, let's take it to a really, my very first business was a cleaning business. My standard of clean is probably different for an employee's standard of clean. Maybe they grew up in a household where hoarding was normal. And so their standard of clean is like brilliant. And for me, I'm looking at their standard of clean and it's subpar. And you could take that across any kind of business.
Totally.
Right? Like, what is a hard worker? What is great income? What is, like, list anything that you have a standard as an employer. And so the magic thing is to know on an individual basis, how did Dino, how did Frank, how did Tanya get their standard of great? And how close is it to the standard you need for great? And then how do you bridge that distance? And are you even willing to put in the effort to do that? And what gives you the power to have influence over people is to understand that their belief, it sort of sounds sarcastic if I say, I believe you believe that, like dismissive.
Right.
But I don't mean it that way.
Right.
What I mean by that is, if I grew up in the same place, same circumstances, surrounded by the same people, experiencing the same thing, I would probably believe exactly the same way. I would have the same biases. I would have the same frame for how I'm interacting with the world. And if you can get next to people in your life and accept them with that zero judgment point of view, now you're in a position to help them on a path to see some other belief. So you imagine, if you grew up in a town and everyone, your grandparents, your aunts, uncles, everybody you looked up to, every time you walked outside, they looked up and they pointed at the sky and they said, Dino, isn't that a beautiful red sky? And they would look at you having blue eyes. I don't think you have blue eyes.
No.
But they would say, Dino, you have amazing red eyes. When you moved out of that community, right, and you go to the town and somebody says, "Hey, Dino, what color is the sky?" You wouldn't say, "I believe the sky is red."
That's right.
You would actually say, "The sky's red."
Sure.
It wouldn't occur to you.
It's not a belief system.
It's not a belief. And so I always say the most dangerous belief a person can have is the one they don't identify as a belief. Because to them, it's true. Now, what does that have to do with, the place we started of hiring people, and how do they stick and stay in your organization, the flight risk? And it really comes down to understanding who the human is and how do they view the world around them that is your business, their community, whether that's their family community, their church community, the city, government, right? The closer we can get to really being able to see what that is, the better off we're going to make a match.
Wow. There's a lot of really good stuff there, because first of all, starting with, I believe that you believe that. I didn't take that as sarcastic at all. As a matter of fact, for me, I immediately went to like, oh, that's a really great way to have conversations with, whether it be my kids who might have a different belief system around something, like, because when you said that, you could see like how they grew up and all that stuff. I can also see that as the exact opposite, right? So if they don't like how they grew up, right, but now they have a different belief system of like, oh, well, I believe this out of either rebellion, or I thought I find this more attractive or whatever. But to be able to say that, it actually de-escalates it. Oh, I believe you believe that.
Yeah,
I don't have to agree with it. I don't think that I don't have to say you're right. I can just say, or I'm wrong, or you're wrong, or I'm right, is, oh, I believe you believe that.
Yeah. When I grew up, it was still appropriate to call somebody retarded. I know we don't say that anymore, but you could say, developmentally delayed, having some sort of, alternate gift, whatever you want to call it. If somebody has something going on with them that's showing up in a way that we would consider dysfunction, like, we don't get mad at them. It's just what they do when they have that thing, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, you don't, it wouldn't even occur to you.
Right.
If you have a child, a young child, and the young child's soiling its diaper, you're not getting mad at the child. That's what young children do.
Sure.
So when you can say, I believe you believe that, I can't get mad at you, because people who believe that do that thing.
Yeah.
Like, you think about, I'll use an extreme example. The terrorists, that's the label we give them. And I agree that what they have done is terrible. But the ones that flew planes into the World Trade Center, they actually had a belief. The week before, they're out playing soccer with their kids, their family men, but their belief was, in order to be faithful to their God, they had to act in a certain way.
Right.
We would actually admire that in our country if a person acted in harmony with their belief to the point they were willing to sacrifice everything for it.
Yeah.
The problem is that they were surrounded in an environment that created an ugly belief system, a dysfunctional belief. And I'm not trying to say that it was good what they did. Obviously, it was horrible.
Right.
However, if we can put ourselves in that place of saying, I believe you believe that, it really allows you to solve a lot of problems. I'm not going to change terrorist behavior by calling somebody a terrorist. It's their belief. But if I can understand, how do people grow up on our planet and over time evolve very extreme points of view and beliefs, now I'm in a position to do something about it. Now, come away from extreme.
Right. I was going to say,
that problem's way outside something you and I are going to solve.
Sure.
However, when I look at my company, and maybe I have 20 people or 40 people, 100, couple hundred people, I do have the ability to really shape that world, to say, how do I take people with other beliefs, view of the world, and what great is for them? And how do I bring them in and expose them to what great is from my point of view?
Yeah, because their view of what great is, or mine, I should say, is going to be different. If I'm a high performer, I'm a business owner, I'm a doctor, I'm going to have a different view of what great is compared to my team members who are just essentially there to get a paycheck. They're not looking to be high performers in their life. So they're not looking at great in the same way. when you said that earlier about the great thing, it's funny. I have my cousin is visiting this week with her family and her husband. And I think I'm a pretty great husband. I mean, I'm attentive. I've been married for almost 30 years. Like I really like being a husband. And I'm
You're
like,
either a great husband or your wife's long suffering.
yeah, exactly. Well, that's both can be true at the same
probably,
time.
Probably
Both can be true at the same
right?
time.
By the way, the same thing would be true for me.
But my cousin's husband's here, and he's that guy who is like he's tinkering with everything. He'll go and fix this little light over here. He'll go he just loves to do projects. So in the last 2 days, he's done all these projects around the house, and my wife's like, "This is awesome," and I'm going, "Yeah, it is." But my view of great is not doing that. It's just being a present dad. I didn't have that, so my view of being a present dad and being here and being a attentive husband is different. It's not wrong. It's just different, right? So the views. So when you said that, I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm going through right now. Is going like, is he a greater husband than me?
And how long will somebody stay working for you? Well, there's a lot of things that, play into that. But here's my belief is that people will still work for you as long as they believe they can still do their greatest work of their life working for you.
Oh, interesting.
As soon as that's not true, they're going to be unhappy, unmotivated, and they're going to start looking. And they might stay with your company for a long time in that mode. But if at their core, they believe they can live their best life, do their best work, that might be the work they're doing for you, might be you're enabling them to do work for their family or work they're passionate about. They're going to keep doing that work with you. So if you're a business owner, you have to be up close personal to people working for you and say, what is the best work that's yet to be done for them? And am I enabling them to do that working for me? If that's true, they're going to stay. The minute it's not true, they're going to leave.
So in Sales Boss, it sounds like it's not just about building a sales team. It's about really understanding your employees in general.
Yeah. So I have a ton of people who say, I wish I had read this for my entire team, not just for my sales team. I wrote it from the perspective of somebody who is coming in and taking over an unperforming sales team. And I wrote it from that perspective because that was my frame and my worldview. But I think about building but the principles are the same regardless, because at the core of selling and building a sales organization is humans doing a thing.
Right.
And if you've ever been on the inside of a high performing sales team, it looks like magic. Like there is this intricate dance that's happening between sales and marketing and your operations team, and the result of which is just revenue that piles up, and it seems effortless. But the truth is, at the core of that is a human. I call that human the sales boss, not because they're the boss. Boss is an acronym that I use for looking at humans. But at the center of that is somebody who has put a very carefully constructed plan into place into how do I bring the humans into my organization and how do I motivate them?
And in order to do that, you have to really understand their behavior. They're going to understand what is important to them. Like you said, if they feel like they're doing their best work of their life here, they'll stay. So is that where AI now has helped you kind of transition into helping people really understand that at a higher level?
Yeah. It's funny that you say behavior, because sales boss, the first B stands for behavior.
Okay.
And then O is for outlook, S is for skill, S is for stature. So that's sort of the levers to diagnose what's going on in a business. But you transition to this world of AI. Interestingly, I think for most people, AI now, when they hear AI, they think Chat GPT.
Yeah, for sure.
But AI really got started in the 1950s. And there's a lot of things related to AI that have nothing to do with large language models. What is AI? It is advanced pattern recognition. That's at its basic what it is.
That's a really easy way to explain it. Yeah.
Right. So large language models are just understanding the patterns in human language and enough compute power to give you an output that sounds human.
Right.
Right. That's all it is. Same thing when you're doing recognition of images or creating images. It's understanding a pattern. I liken it to, if you ever taken off from in an airplane at an airport, and you sort of taking off the runway and you look out the window, and when you first look, you just see sort of the airport, maybe some buildings. You get high enough, all of a sudden you can look down and you see, oh, there's these round fields. I'm in the Midwest. Those are cornfields, and I'm getting perspective.
Right.
And that's really what AI is it's sitting at a high enough level that it can take in a much bigger pattern that a human sitting in a plane on the ground could ever possibly do.
Sure. Well, so it's funny you use that just to make that point about I sometimes feel like I use Claude and stuff like that for script writing, things like that. I often sometimes forget that I'm not talking to another human being.
Yeah, it's incredible.
They're recognizing my patterns. And if you think about it, we're all patterns, right? As humans, if you look at books like The Power of Habit and things like that, where we all don't make decisions, we make habits.
Yeah, my grandfather used to say, business would be easy if it wasn't for the people.
Yeah.
And I've sort of adapted that to people are unique, but they are predictably unique.
Yes.
Right? There's still a pattern.
Yeah.
The hard part is for us as humans to identify that pattern. So what have we done? What have we built inside of Perception, Predict, and Who Hire, which are two companies that we have that play in that space, is we've taken the ability to recognize patterns. So there's this whole world of what's considered IO psychology. So it's psychographics. A lot of people will recognize like personality tests. Like,
right.
Are you introverted or extroverted? Are you red, yellow, or blue? Are you a lion, tiger, or bear? Oh my.
Right.
It's those sort of things. That's just one tiny part of what the world of IO psychology says we can measure. There's hundreds and hundreds of things. So what we've done is we've taken those hundreds of items and we've created questionnaires with them. They're all stable human attributes. And so we go into a large population, say, of people selling cars or people that are installers or people that are cleaners or people that are, and we assess them against those library of items. So this is hardcore research work. What makes up the people doing the job today?
Right.
And on the other side of that, we bring in actual performance data for those people. So if it's sales, what were their sales numbers? How long did they work there? If they're, if it's some service that they're providing, what was their customer satisfaction scores? And we're feeding that into a machine learning algorithm that just allows the AI to recognize the pattern. So it can say for these people doing this job, the people that tend to do really well at the job have these traits in common in this weighting, and the people that sort of, and so then when you have a new person apply, you're just having them take a questionnaire, and our system is going out and saying, this is the closest pattern they match in our system, and this is how that subset of people do in that role typically, and here's how long they typically stay. I think of it sort of like, if you're a poker player, and even if you're not, you'll probably understand the illustration is a poker hand has a ranking. It's a risk profile, right? Related to that hand. There's a probability attached to, if you have 3 jacks, how is that going to play out over time? It's not right every time,
right?
But the probability is higher. And so that's what we're providing people. We're a probability engine to say, if you hire this human into your company, this is the probability they're going to operate at the highest level of the organization. And this is the probability score for how long they're going to stay with you.
So I like that in the sense of you're talking about different types of industries. There's a lot of our listeners that are in the private practice space. So dentists, orthodontists, chiropractors. I've often said there are certain personalities that just fit better in certain positions inside the office. The personality for the dental assistant is going to be different than the personality for the insurance verifier or the front desk coordinator, right? So
and
it makes sense that you can look at that and see the data and then go, okay, well, based upon the way this person answered these questions, they'd be a good fit, or no.
And that's why I wrote in my book about personality assessments.
Yeah.
Right. Because personality does show up in the workplace.
Yeah.
What I learned since then, and why I invested and came in as the CEO of Perception, Predict, and Who Hire, is I learned that there was so many other things we could look at beyond personality that were actually related to a higher degree of probability in being able to make a prediction.
So how much of a relief is this for business owners to be able to go, oh, I, for lack of a better phrase, I guess, can put a bet on this person based upon the prediction and be able to know that I have a little bit of peace of mind. We all know the cost of hiring. We know the cost of hiring incorrectly and how much that costs every business. This has got to be a really big, major relief for so many people.
Yeah. And then we wrap that in a bunch of automation. So everything from writing the job ad, and we do use ChatGPT types of tools, Claude types of tools to help them write that. We push it out to the job boards. We automate some of the screening, texting, so it feels very human. So all of that drudgery, mind-numbing work that you have to go through to just sift through applications and get somebody to show up in front of you.
Yes.
We handle all of that in an automated way. So the only people that you're really having to talk to are people that you sort of can't go wrong if you hired them. Now you can really spend your time. Do I like this human? Are they a fit for my culture? Right. If they don't have the skills currently, because we're not measuring skill.
Right.
Can they do that? I liken it to, if you walked in on a room full of kids beating on pots and pans, little kids, and you were able to, with a high degree of accuracy, say, this kid over here beating on that big pot, if I put him in the right room with the right training and the right opportunities, that kid's going to play at Carnegie Hall. I can give this kid over here that same training opportunity, and I'm probably not going to want to listen to him at a karaoke bar unless I've had a bunch to drink. Right? And you get some people that will, their initial reaction to that will be like, well, that's sort of wrong to put people in a bucket. Yes and no. The yes part of that is, yes, we all have the ability to stretch ourselves and do hard things and do things that we're not naturally talented and gifted at.
Yeah.
Right. However, it's also true that there are some things that you are not naturally gifted at that you will never play at the highest level. Like, you give me all the sports training you want, I'm not going to be on an NBA team.
Never. Yeah, totally.
Right. You give me a bunch of training, time and effort, I'm probably not going to play at Carnegie Hall.
Right.
Like, that's not a negative thing. If in order for me to get paid, I need to play at Carnegie Hall. Right. And that's what you're thinking about with humans. I can bring in a human that's not naturally geared to excel at that thing. And yes, they could probably, with some headache and effort and challenge, do it, but they're going to go home every day exhausted, drained. Yeah. We were talking before, we got on this call about the coaching that you do around helping people become better public speakers.
Yeah.
There are people who get up, they give a public speech, they come down and they're energized, like they're ready to go out and, paint the town. They're like, they're ready to go.
Sure.
There's other people that can get up there and do that. And they're like, I got to go sleep it off for 2 days. I'm exhausted.
Yeah. It drains them. Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
You don't want the employee that, and to be honest, the person that was drained might've been the better speaker, but that speaker that gets drained by doing that is not the speaker that's going to go on the road 250 days out of the year.
No way. Yeah.
They're not going to organize their business that way.
Yeah.
So how does that translate to, to your dental practice owner? Well, you can bring people in and ignore the probability statistics, and they might even work out and they might be able to do the job, but they're not going to be, they're going to be stressed by it.
Right.
It's going to have a drag on them, and they will churn out at some point.
Yep.
And they're going to be unhappy every day until they churn out.
Yeah.
I think it's much more human to just not hire those people. Like, there are plenty of jobs they can go out there and do where they can feel energized. And when they're done with the day, they're like, wow, I want to do that again tomorrow.
Well, when you said that earlier, like, some people might think, well, you don't want to put them in the box. I think it's being kind to people to be able to say, you know what, this isn't going to be your forte. So we'll either put you over here, or you should be looking in this route.
Well, and it's also disingenuous, because let's face it, the whole purpose of a hiring process is to say no to a lot of people.
Yes.
And yes to 1, 2, or 3.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. And the worst hires are, I just need a warm body hire. You don't want to go that route. You want the person who's going to thrive in this place. And it just seems to me, why don't I want to make my life that much easier by hiring people who are predictably more adaptable to this space of what you want them to do? Even if that prediction tells me they're here, but their personality will get them here faster than this person over here.
That's it. Yeah. So you still have to look at experience and all the other things that go on. And even, there's only so much with an online instrument that you can measure. So I could have somebody that has the talent to play at Carnegie Hall, but somewhere in their life, they face stress and they develop a drug and alcohol problem.
Sure. Right.
They're probably never going to play at Carnegie Hall at the level they could. Maybe I chose a bad example.
Well, there's always human factor, right? There's
there's the human factor. So we're not completely de-risking that. It's like a poker hand. We want to, on a poker hand, you want to get as many chips in as you can on the highest probability. And that's what we're trying to enable the business owner to do, is you're going to push a lot of chips across the table when you make that hiring decision. Let's make sure you have the highest confidence that you've made the right decision.
So as speaking of confident, as a business owner, I'm looking at who hire to start the process with. They have touch points of pretty much all the areas that I don't want to deal with when I'm writing the ad, to interviews, to all of that. How do I engage with you? What does that look like?
Yeah, so it's just a monthly subscription for people to be involved on the platform. It comes with unlimited hiring. Our team helps you set it up so you don't have to learn a new platform, although it's drop dead simple, easy to use. It's beautiful. And from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time, we have a live help team. If you ever need help or advice, you literally, with no appointment, hop online at meetwhohire.com and you'll have a real human there that you can look at and they can talk you through it.
Wow, that is so cool. And what's the goal? What's the big dream for Who Hire and Perception Predict?
We want to change the way people find and employ people. That's our, put people in jobs that they can be happy at. I believe that the quality of our community is based upon the quality of the companies, because the companies are the ones that pay people and enable people to invest in their families, invest in their communities. So that's where I feel like we play. If your listeners go to whohire.com and check it out, they'll notice that it will feel like it's just for home services, but it is for every sort of business that hires people. We've chosen from a branding standpoint to sort of play in that space with the Who Hire brand around home services, primarily because there's a ton of private equity rolling up those firms, and there's a big tech play. So when we think long term, we're going to sort of market one sort of niche at a time, but we have a bunch of tech players and professional services companies, transportation companies, all utilizing Who Hire to hire people.
When you say home services, you're talking about home healthcare?
I was thinking I'm talking like HVAC, plumbing, electrical, all of those kinds of companies thrive on our platform because they're hiring a lot of people.
Yeah. No,
right. And in many cases, they're hiring somebody and, putting them in as an apprentice plumber or an apprentice technician. They're investing $40,000 plus to put somebody in a van on the road.
Yeah.
You don't want to get that decision wrong too often.
Yeah, for sure. Holy moly, man. And a podcast episode where we talked about everything from the terrorist attacks all the way to hiring plumbers. That's pretty good.
We covered a broad swath of things there. I apologize in advance to your audience.
No, it's great. I love it. I love it. Keeps them interested, keeps them focused. It's good. Well, at the end of all of our episodes, we always end with 4 questions that we ask every one of our guests to kind of rapid fire off the top of your head questions that get us to know a little bit more about you and based around the role of owning your role, ROLE. Are you willing to play?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. What do you, Jonathan, believe is the highest and greatest responsibility you have on this earth?
Wow. Let's do a whole new podcast episode.
Yep.
Yeah. I think this will sound selfish. I think my highest, greatest responsibility is to keep myself healthy and balanced, and operating at peak capacity. Because without my health and my mind, I cannot be a good husband. I cannot provide for my children, and I can do no good on the planet.
I love that. That's great. It's not selfish. That's exactly what it's supposed to be about. What is your responsibility? Number 2 is, What do you want as the ultimate outcome of your life?
The ultimate outcome for in my life, I want to, when I pass away, for those that know me to know that I saw them authentically for who they were.
Ooh.
And that they knew I cared and accepted them completely for who they were. And I really, that starts closest to me. I want my wife to know I saw her, I cared, and she was 100% free to be the version of her she wanted to be, not the version I needed her to be.
Wow, that's super powerful. I love that. You deal with a lot of leaders. So the next question is around leadership. What do you consider true leadership to be?
Yeah, there's so many facets of leadership. I define a good leader by their ability to enable people to believe bigger about themselves and to give them the courage to go after that bigger version of themselves.
Love that. That's really cool. Last question is based upon the fact that we'll all have, you mentioned a moment ago, when you pass on, we all will have that final day on this earth. And hopefully it's decades and decades from now. But what experience do you hope to or want to have between now and dead?
Well, it's going to be a long way away for me because I'm going to live to be 150.
Cool.
So between now and then, I want to have as many one-on-one, really cool, meaningful experiences. Like that's the thing in life that fascinates me, to just be one-on-one with somebody and really get to know them at a deep level. That's what makes me tick. Outside of that, like if I just think about like what's really cool, when I finally hit the point where I want to retire, I want to get a yacht and I want to travel all of the western part of the U.S. to start up in Seattle, Washington area, do Vancouver, come down, go into the Sea of Cortez, have the boat pulled out of the water, taken over to the East Coast. So that's what I got, sort of a 4 or 5 year plan around a yacht. I think that'll be pretty cool.
That is really cool. That sounds fun. Wow. Well, Jonathan, this has been just a plethora of information, and really enjoyed this conversation a lot. I'm sure many people listening to this did too. And I'm so glad that you have the mindset that you do. You've shared that with us and brought that into something like Who Hire, where it can help so many people avoid headaches, be their best at their job, find leaders who can find predictable and people they can count on to help grow their businesses. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, appreciate the best part of a business and the worst part of a business is the people. So when you get the people part right, you have the best part of your business.
It's totally true. Totally true. Wow. Well, thank you for joining us today, Jonathan. I really appreciate it, and glad we get to share this with the world.
Thank you. Enjoy to spend time with you today.
Everyone, thank you for being a part of the Own Your Role podcast. Please reach out to Jonathan and the whohire.com to find out how they can help you and all of your hiring needs. And I hope you enjoyed this podcast as much as I do, with getting to know Jonathan and thinking about things a little differently. Everything from believing that you believe that all the way to finding the right people in your business. What a great episode. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode of the Own Your Role podcast.